to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have just returned from closed session where we discussed the superintendent's contract, employee assignment, and we discussed and voted on a proposed settlement agreement and general release in case number 201804025578, with a motion by Member Rodriguez and a second by Member Nguyen to approve a settlement agreement between the district and certain parents. The terms include payment by the district for educational services for the student in the amount of $2,000 and a payment of attorney fees in the amount of $18,000 for a total of $20,000 and waiver of a claim by the parents. The vote was Member Thomas, aye. Member Crocker, aye. Member Nguyen, aye. Member Rodriguez, aye. Member Preciado was not present, so there was no votes. Okay. And I would hope and thank everyone for helping us move this meeting on quickly. We were in closed session longer than we anticipated. We would like that any presentations be limited to 10 minutes or less. And since many of you are new to coming to our meetings, we limit comments for the speaker cards to 3 minutes, and we will give you notice, and you'll also see the notice up there on the board. So thank you for helping us move this along. So next we move to approval of the agenda. I think there will be an item pulled, in which case those of you that would ordinarily be speaking to that item are certainly willing to speak to the item at during non-agenda item discussion or input. Okay, so with that, I'd like to ask if anyone would like to pull an agenda item.
Yes, I would like to pull. Thank you, President Thomas. I would like to pull item 10.12, superintendent contract. We're still ironing out some of the details.
Based on that, President Thomas, board, we've already informed the community that if they already fill out cards, then it would be under public comment on non-agenda items, that they would speak if they wanted to speak on the item on the superintendent's contract. That's the way we've normally done it.
That's what I just announced.
No, but I have more on that. And because of that, which we might have, that might take a while, in lieu of what you stated as far as trying to keep the meeting going, I'm trying to think of past precedent where we would allow public comment and then items to be, was it 20 minutes or, and then, the total amount, right? And then we could move it to the end. Is that?
Right, but we do not have a long
Okay, so we're all good. Okay, good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, so next we...
acceptance of the agenda with modifications.
So the motion was made by Member Crocker. Do I have a second?
Second.
To accept the agenda with removal of the superintendent's contract discussion. So please vote. Five ayes. Thank you. So next we move to public comment on non-agenda items. That is item 8.1, but we do have a speaker on item that we pulled.
Before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to give
Yeah, it's brief. A few things. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. I wanted to recap. We had a good conversation earlier about strategic plan. There will be more work on that coming forward. You'll see there was a draft in the agenda in this last posting. In July, the staff will be updating that further, and I just encourage everyone, if you get a chance, to take a look at that, and if you have any ideas or questions about it, happy to field some of those if you want to email me. But I think it's good that we're beginning to kind of solidify it and add more of the framework and make it a little clearer as to what we're up to and what we're going to be doing to plan that. So I just want to share that with you, that it's available, and we'll be making more drafts available, bringing back the next version or iteration July 31st for the board to review again. The next item I want to get the board input on a little bit is a little bit of a report, but also kind of something to think about. Volunteer cost for families that are free or reduced, and the cost to do fingerprinting and to become a volunteer can be costly and a barrier. And I think that's something I plan to bring back for us to have a more formal discussion in a future agenda. But I know it's something that we are concerned about, is how do we allow people to volunteer, but then if they don't have the means to pay for those fees, it becomes a bit of a dilemma. So I didn't know if there was any comments or guidance for me, and then I do plan to bring it back formally.
Actually, I do have a comment on, go ahead, Frankie.
So I was going to say, my understanding is when we voted on the proposal, and I stated this as part of my vote, was that that would be addressed, and we were informed that through, there was, I don't know if it was through which specific fund, but that would be addressed so that equity was in fact considered and taken into account. That's the only reason I supported it, to make sure that people were not allowed to volunteer.
Yeah, we do want it to be a barrier, now that you're saying that, I remember.
And I think it's important to make sure that whatever fund it comes out of, it's a legitimate expense that can be charged to that account.
Okay.
So what I'm familiar with is that the site principals have discretion. They would set aside a certain amount into a budget account or whatnot, and each principal has the discretion to use that or authorize the use of that account to pay for that fingerprinting for specific volunteers or volunteers to their specific schools.
Okay, I will work on a policy development that has more of that definition in it, but I wanted to get some input from the board. Thank you for reminding me of that. The next item to update the board on is we do have agreement in the 3-year teaching calendar. The calendar committee was successful in completing 3 years of calendars with a progressive effort to work towards having first semester finals for secondary schools completed before winter, and what was approved gets us there over a 3-year period. It was a kind of a nice solution the committee came up with, and it gets closer to that goal with actually getting to it by the 2019-20. By the 2020 school year, we'll be there. Or no, I think I had it wrong.
1920.
It would be by 3 years out, we would get to the full implementation. The good news is we have a 3-year calendar that can be predictable to families. So I just wanted to thank the calendar committee for their work on that. And I want to remind the board that Friday updates will resume from the superintendent's office to the board back in August. Many of the staff that provide updates to the board will be on and off, but I'll resume Friday updates to the board in August, although you'll be getting regular email as needed. That concludes my report at this time.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we move on to public comment on non-agenda items. Item 8. Mr. McCarthy, would you like to speak to the superintendent's contract during this time?
Thank you. Only because I don't know when it will come back, or if I'll be available to speak, I'll speak. The limited issue of the proposed raise and contract extension for Mr. Sanchez, only because the timing is questionable in light of the budget we're presented with. Mr. Sanchez was retained for a 3-year contract, and that 3 years is not up. So it's confusing why we're discussing this at this time. Is the justification for renegotiating the contract to not only pay him more, but also, I know that's not in the contract yet, but it may be, but also to secure his employment for a longer term out of concern we might lose him for greener pastures. If so, I request that you say so that we all know the score. Because I'd submit that the board should free Mr. Sanchez from the constraints of his contract and invite him to seek out greener pastures if that's what he wants. That's what the teachers have been doing in droves. But the difference between them and Mr. Sanchez is he's pulling down $235K and they're not. And they can't afford to stay with us. And so we're losing out. We have Spanish teachers who don't speak Spanish. We have counselors potentially via a mobile app. So what's more than just confusing, and what's distressing is that we'd be contemplating a raise for our superintendent while discussing the continued financial strife that our district is facing, and the raise doesn't help. The disconnect is troublesome. How do you justify the impropriety of giving even more money to one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid superintendents of the surrounding Alameda County districts? Oakland's superintendent gets $6.11 per student. Fremont, $8.43 per student. Pleasanton, $17.96 per student. Livermore, $22.94 per student. Mr. Sanchez in Cash-Strapped Newark beats them all, $39.17 per student, and rising. Why are you giving him a contract that starts in 2018 but retroactively paying him as if he's been under that new and improved contract since 2017? He came in under a 3-year contract that lasted 1 year and is transformed into a 4-year contract. Forgive my ignorance. Are we also adding 2 director-level positions to the district office? Was that money sitting in the same pot where we found the money to give Mr. Sanchez a retroactive raise? Please say it ain't so. It doesn't make sense, especially when in our next breath, we're talking about our financial shortcomings. And while our budget concludes that we're going to engage in deliberate deficit spending, that's a quote, deliberate deficit spending, and we're supposed to be learning from our own mistakes, I don't understand where we're at. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. I hope that is the case, because I hope the board would not act like this. Candidly and bluntly, it's a bad look. It calls into question the board's ability and credibility. Please find some time in the agenda, today or otherwise, to clarify these points for those of us keeping score on this board's wins and losses. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to non-agenda items? Okay, next we move on to old business 9. Superintendent or Ms. Salinas, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yes, good evening. I come forward with a second reading or presentation around augmenting a course of study for our students who would like to study a language other than what we offer currently, Spanish and French. A little bit of background, Section 51243 of the California Ed Code states that the State Board of Education can adopt rules and regulations prescribing standards and conditions, and essentially allows school districts to accept private school coursework that is completed in another subject area. Specifically for us, this would be for the language of Arabic. We are recommending approval of this. We have a significant number of parents who are coming forward and are requesting this. At the last time I was here, some of the questions that the board posed and recommended was that we can put in a timeline for review. And so I do come forward that I will be working closely with Fremont Unified School District, who is now in I believe their 12th year of implementing and accepting this school as part of their course of study or alternative for students. And then we'll also provide 2 on-site visits 2 times a year to ensure that we are working closely and also overseeing it. I also want to share that this program was approved by the University of California's department as it relates to Arabic language. And then of the Near Eastern Studies at UC Berkeley. Also, we did a little history, because I know one of our board members had shared, she thought that this might have come forward before with a different subject area. And so we could not find all of the documents, but it appears that about 10 years ago, we did approve a private school that offered a Chinese language course of study, and we certainly accepted that as coursework for our students. In researching our surrounding school districts, Fremont Unified has about 15 schools that are private schools that and offer this. And so students who want to pursue a language that's not offered at the school district can certainly do that. And then we would work closely with the submittal to put it on their transcripts. I also want to say that part of this is coming to us as from our parent base. I know a question was asked from the board the last time, would we do this for any other language? We would if we don't offer the language. Part of the on-site reviews that I will do will be part of looking at if we have enough of a critical mass and enough students that would warrant even for Newark Unified to bring on board Arabic as a language for our district, we would certainly do that. And I had a great meeting with the petitioners, and they certainly are on board. I mean, this is mostly for them. It's about providing their students with another avenue and another option. And so we come forward this evening with certainly our recommendation to approve this. And this also is in progress with New Haven Unified. And so we're hoping to be able to support this as the Tri-City. And this is a private school that has been working closely with Fremont for over 10 years as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have several members of the public that wish to speak to this. FIFA Arif.
Hello everyone, I am Afifa Arif. I am 11 years old and I graduated from 6th grade at Birch Grove Intermediate in the Newark Unified School District. I'm really excited about the idea of Arabic coming into the Newark Unified. As someone that has always been interested in studying languages, I think this is a great opportunity for me to have the chance to study a language that is spoken by so many people across the world. Studying languages has been a way for us to connect with people from the different parts of the world, and living in the Bay Area is such a diverse part of the country that it is more important and essential than ever before. I hope Arabic gets approved in the Newark Unified so students can go all over the world.
Thank you. Hala Bengazmi. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing these names correctly.
Really complicated last name. So hello, dear members of board members. My name is Hala bin Kwasmi, and I'm going to 8th grade at Newark Junior High School, and I would like to take Arabic in high school. And I kindly ask all of you to please aboard this for our benefit. And I would like to say, if I went to high school just one more year and I will go to high school, and I really don't want to learn a language that I really don't like to learn it, like Spanish or French, because I know how to speak French. So I really want to learn Arabic so badly. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Faisal Ali, is that how I pronounce it?
Hello, everybody. My name is My name is Faisal Ali. I've been here in New York for past 11 years. And I'm happy to call New York our home, and thank you for the school district to provide this opportunity to enrich our kids' future and allowing this Arabic program to be accepted. My son Mohammed, he's an 8th grade student, and he's been attending for the past 1 year the Arabic Academy, and I drop him off, pick him up. I do regular meetings with the teacher. And it is very well organized, and I see all good things happening with learning in another language. He's already speaking 2 languages at home, and this will also further enhance. And studies, quant studies have shown that learning a language increases kids' ability to perform well in his academics, socially, and throughout his career. So far, in over 1 year, he's having a basic reading, writing, and vocabulary, and he's able to carry out a very low-level conversation in Arabic. I have seen his improvement in his social skills with this interaction. Having another language, it builds confidence in him. So students like Muhammad can benefit from this, and I encourage you to look at this program thoroughly and follow what other school districts have done. And I see nothing but good things happening to our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Amra Aref.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Amra Arif. I am in college. I'm a second year at University of California, Berkeley, and I'm also an intended Arabic major. And I would like to address you today because I feel like learning languages is very important, especially in our current climate in the world right now. You know, technology is making the world a smaller and smaller place. And having a language barrier is honestly an impediment. Like the more we learn languages, the more we're able to relate to people that we otherwise would have difficulty relating to. And from everything from politics to the social sphere to business to technology, our world is shrinking, and it's really important for us to learn a lot of different languages. And I feel that Arabic is a really good start to introduce to our public school system because it is one of the most commonly spoken languages in the world. In fact, it's the 5th most commonly spoken language. And if I had this opportunity in junior high, I honestly feel like I would be so much better off right now in college and be doing so many more advanced things with my language. So I would really request you, the members of the board, to approve Arabic as a language so students are able to gain more social skills, are able to open their mind and experience a culture that is not their own. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to address this agenda item? Next, we would move on to comments from the board. Mr. Nguyen, and then Ms. Crocker, and then Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, and I'll reiterate what I mentioned last time when this was the first reading. There's no question about the value of language and learning other languages. And as an educator, I know full well the benefits of that. So the question I have for Ms. Salinas is, when we were discussing this course with Fremont Unified, because you said they've had it for 12 years, did they have it as a CSU A through G course approved, or was it just an elective credit approved?
It was essentially for credit approval. Once it's approved and placed onto the transcripts, then CSU accepts it. So it does become acceptable, and they have had students who have already been accepted to the university, and it counts towards it on their transcripts, once we place it on our transcripts. And I was I wanted to be very clear because I know that was the question you asked last time, and they have had, many students have already gone through and they were accepted.
I'm having a hard time reconciling the notion that, you know, as a principal, everyone tells me that if you want your course to be A through G accepted or CSU accepted, it has to be on the A through G list. It has to be on UC doorways, or else it does not count. And that's been nailed into my head over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we reconcile what you just stated with the fact that the course isn't on? Now, Arabic itself is approved on the CSU A through G, but through other schools, but none in Fremont and none in New Haven.
So it's a, you know, and I even was able to pull one of our colleagues who retired a few years ago, Mr. Maxwell, and it is a little known law, according to him, Ed Code, where it does accept it once we place it onto our transcript. So I can certainly continue to dig, but they have had students have all been accepted for UC and CSU, and it has been accepted.
As A through G?
Once it's placed on their transcript, so it's accepted for credit towards the language requirement.
That's just something I'm not at all familiar with in any course. Like I said, there might be a nuanced exception to language that I'm not aware of. But from my understanding that every course in our catalog that we want to be A through G has to be on UC doorways. And that's why it exists in 10 public high schools, right? And so why wouldn't, so the question is, if they've done for 12 years, why wouldn't they just submit the course for approval?
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure what Fremont has done in that respect.
So,
can we do that?
Well, we don't have oversight. Yeah. This is a private school, so and actually, I might ask one of the petitioners to come forward. May I ask you to come forward? So we don't, because we don't dictate how they run the private school. That would be up to them to do if they wanted to make it UC. What the provision in the Ed Code allows is that once we comply with all this, and then we actually even have an existing board policy 6146.11 for alternative credits towards graduation that actually also allows us to do it.
It's the graduation and the credits on the transcript. That's within our discretion. but the A through G CSU portion of it is not within our discretion. We have to submit that for approval. And I'm just curious how Fremont has been able to bypass that for the past 12 years.
Yeah, I've not.
And if we are going to do this, whether that would then apply to us, is there anything in writing that says that we can do this, or has it just been a past practice that have utilized?
So I can't speak specifically to, so the question is, would we apply for UC CSU? But that is not in our purview. And
yeah, we would be happy to go do that, but that was never a requirement. And we have been going by school district. Right now, there are students here that are in San Jose State College. My daughter got admitted to UC Riverside this year. And her AG requirements for foreign language was through this program, and it was accepted. There is a student here, Ammar is here, whose credits were accepted in San Jose State. And it was through that provision that it was board approved in Fremont, and it was on the transcripts of the student, and that it gets accepted, and it says as a foreign language Arabic.
Was that the only foreign language that student took, or was there a possibility?
So there are right now in Fremont about 12 languages.
Well, no. What I mean is, if, for example, a student could very well be accepted.
No, that is the only language.
That was only okay. Because if they took Spanish and Arabic, right?
No. Most of the students are taking just this language.
Arabic. Yes.
And that satisfies the school's graduation requirement, which is 2 years, and it satisfies the AG requirement for state and the UC.
Okay, Ms. Crocker?
I'm just going to say that I'm delighted that we have all kinds of opportunities for kids in terms of languages. There's no way our school district can afford to offer all the possible languages that we could. And so I'm delighted that this is an option for them. And even if it's only an elective credit in terms of where they go, I think we can certainly give credit for that, because it's something that we can't offer at this point. And we have done that in the past for other elective things, whether it's A through G or not. I think it probably should be, and that's something that you would have to figure out between you and the UC system or whatever system in the college, because they're the ones that determine whether a class is A through G or not. But for our graduation requirements, I certainly am in support of accepting this.
But the problem is they can't submit for A through G approval because I don't think they're an accredited private institution or public high school, correct?
Correct, and they don't have to be. And so this is the, I'm not quite sure what more I could bring forward. I think if the UCCSU.
Just more clarity on that provision that Fremont is, or that loophole that Fremont is using.
I would speculate that it has something to do with them being a private institution, much like charter law applies differently. And it also might be somewhere in the law relative to accreditation. So I'd have to look at that. We can still do that. I believe that delaying this decision is not beneficial. I think we continue to do that research anyway and try to get to the root of it. At this point, the onus of their acceptance is through their own school. And these are their students, and I don't see where there's a problem with that. And I think that's why the recommendation is to approve. And I think that we can find out. I think it does raise a question about A through G, but at the same time, I know that charters and private schools have a little bit different set of rules than we do. And maybe that's where the
charters and private schools do get accredited, and once they're accredited, we're allowed to receive transcripts from those schools and adopt those onto our transcripts. I do not believe, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, I do not believe their institution is officially accredited through WASC or any official institution, correct?
Right. So it's a private school, and they don't have to go through that provision.
Correct.
And so for me, looking at just using the ed code and using our current board policy, and then had students that have a school district that has done this already with the same school. I mean, I don't think we should delay this, but I am happy to work with UC CSU and get something in writing from them to give some assurances to the board. But I feel, I take comfort in working closer with Fremont Unified and having their track record of working with so many private schools also. And this is new ground for us.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, President Thomas. Thank you for coming back. I know last time you were here a while.
No,
and
thank you very much for
very
giving
patient.
us the opportunity. Great.
No, we appreciate it. Language is very important to us. You know, the more languages our kids are exposed to, in my opinion, the better we are. I was very fortunate growing up in the Bronx and going to a school that offered multiple languages. So I got a chance to do Greek, Latin, French, Spanish, and I want the same opportunities for our kids. And I have a lot of close friends that do speak Arabic, and hopefully I can learn it. And so I just had a question. So would the academy be open to any of our students if they wanted to go to the academy?
Absolutely. It is open to every Newark and Fremont Unified School District, and it is open only for those students. We don't accept outsiders because we want to make sure that it is only, we maintain the sanctity of the approved system.
Thank you.
And what's your opinion on offering the same opportunity to other groups? Like, for instance, whether it's I know we have Spanish in the schools, but this is more focused.
Yes, this is strictly a school for teaching Arabic.
No, I understand, but if a Spanish group wanted to do an academy in similar, are we, or a Hebrew group wanted to do something, or Chinese group?
If another private school wanted to come forward with the same, yes, we absolutely would look at that. What I think I heard from the board the last time, and I would be in agreement, is that we currently already offer Spanish and we offer French, so we really wouldn't be interested in that. We would be more interested in languages that we don't offer.
Right, so it would be open to Chinese, Hebrew, and others.
Yes, if another private school wanted to. Yes.
Ms. Crocker,
Okay,
and then
thank
Mr.
you.
Winnigan, and then myself.
I will pass.
Okay.
Have
Mr. Winnigan?
Thank you. Have we examined the potential implications as far as FTEs and our foreign language department is concerned?
Yes, we looked at that, and also in speaking with the petitioner, their hope is that if we have enough critical mass and students, that we would one day perhaps offer it here in the school district, but they also recognize that we don't. We currently have, I believe, I can't remember how many Spanish sections we have now, but overwhelmingly our FTE is solid with Spanish. And then French, we're working on making sure we fill those classes as well.
We are, just to add, we are now for non-for-profit organization, and we are here just because there is a need in the community, of student community, and that is not being fulfilled. If the school district is offering that, we would happily withdraw it. It is not, we are not in this because just as long as the student needs are fulfilled, that is all we.
Good. Yeah. Mr. Preciado?
All right, making sure it's on. Okay. So I kind of already explained my thoughts last time around, but I wanted to point on the third paragraph, the last sentence. So the reviews are going to inform NUSD. This is kind of where I stood. I wanted to highlight that hopefully we get enough student interest so that we build Arabic at the high school. And from my perspective, to make sure to add to that piece would be that not only that we build an Arabic language course at the high school, but that it's A through G approved, because that's one of the biggest pieces that you want to make sure that people are taking a class that accounts for those requirements as well. So if from my perspective, in terms of moving forward, would be to add language that we get a report back on your reviews and see if there's a need, so we can start planning for that need.
And finally, I would like to say that I think this is a great opportunity for our students that they wouldn't otherwise have. I appreciate that you are offering it. I feel comfortable that over 10 years in Fremont, that the CSU-UC system has been accepting this toward the language requirement. And also, I have not heard any evidence that it has caused a problem for anyone going to a CSU or UC system. So until and unless there's a problem in that regard, I think it's a good program, and thank you very much.
Excuse me, could I ask one more? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Is there a start date? In other words, there are people that have been taking the class, so we're talking about starting as of any activity they take as of September 1 or the beginning of the school year. So we're not going to go back and collect people that have taken the classes before. Is that correct?
Correct. So my understanding is that now, with your action, it is starting for the 18-19 school year.
Thank you.
We adhere to the calendar timeline that is of the school district.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation by staff.
I'll second, with an amendment that staff report back after the second review. Yes, after the second review, to see if there's a need to build Arabic language through A through G course.
And I'm fine with that addition.
Okay, so Mr. Rodriguez has accepted the amended motion, and this motion has been seconded by Member Preciado. Please vote. Five ayes. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you for coming.
Next, we move on to item 9.2, Board Policy 0410, Non-Discrimination in District Programs and Activities. This is coming back for a second reading, at which point we are able to approve it or hold it over if there's any issues. So do I have a motion, or does anyone want to discuss this?
Comments?
I was going to move to approve.
Member Preciado moves to approve.
Second.
Member Rodriguez seconds. Please vote. Five ayes, thank you. Next, we move on to new business. 10.1 is approval of the 2018-19 Local Control and Accountability Plan, the LCAP.
Good evening. This evening we return back. As our previous school board meeting, we had a public hearing. As background, the LCAP process has been through a process of community meetings, LCAP advisory committee, and our previous school board meeting on June 5th, Director Saavedra presented an overview of the process and the outcomes, and this evening we come forward for approval.
We have people that would like to speak to this agenda item. Mr. Noob.
Good evening, board, executive staff. I basically have one question about it, and it kind of ties together with the NTA contract. So I also put in a speaker card for the NTA contract because it's kind of a chicken and an egg situation. So I don't know how this is going to, or maybe it's not an issue. Maybe I just misread it. So my understanding, and I joined some of the LCAP process meetings, is that this year no bonuses, retention, whatever you want to call it, any cash compensation to certificated, classified, managerial, or contracted employees will be given this year. That's, I think, how it's codified. What is it, 318? And I just want to get a confirmation that that's true. So, because in the NTA contract, it says something that I'm not sure how I should interpret that. So I just want to get clarification on this, and I think we need to be, obviously transparent about whether bonuses or retention things are given to employees out of the LCAP money. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Parks?
I also attended many of the meetings, and even as you were appointing your advisory committee, I had some concerns about the number of participants. And as was shared at the last meeting, not a single LCAP meeting had quorum. There were a lot of concerns that have been raised through the process. The numbers, you had appointed people, and then they had turned around and arbitrarily reduced the voting number of members that they looked at as far as what is quorum. But beyond that, there were some suggestions that were made at the last meeting by Nicole Izant, who was a sitting member, and by a few other people, that to look at what you learned after now these 4 years, to perhaps apply that to the next one when it's working through the process. To go along with what Mr. Preciado said earlier in regards to the volunteer, that was also mentioned at the last meeting by Nicole Izant, that perhaps some of the LCAP money can be utilized for the fingerprinting and background checks, and that would fit into Goal 4, maintaining the level of parent involvement by sustaining the level of volunteers who support our schools and parent participation on various advisory groups. So there's your funding source. It was just a matter of it being incorporated into the LCAP. So I don't know if it's too late for perhaps, or I mean, I know you're going to approve it, but as was said to the committee, is that it's a living, breathing document, so perhaps it can be altered. I would also like to get a response to what Mr. Knoop said, because it does, there is some language in the NTA contract that says that the 0.5 bonus, is stipend, whatever you want to call it, is being paid out of the LCAP. So I would like to get a response to that.
Thank you. Since that does have a bearing on the contract, that ratification, perhaps staff will address that when we look at the contract ratification and clarify.
How can you approve the LCAP not knowing whether it's in here or not?
I think that's immaterial in terms of.
Oh, we shouldn't interrupt. She has 30 seconds. It's public comment.
I think that it's relevant. It's part of your it's part
it's
of the next
Q&A session.
The item 3 and 2 after this one. I think it's relevant before you approve the LCAP, so you know what you're approving. Is there no one here that can answer that?
As you know, it's not a back and forth.
I understand that.
So that's why I wanted to give you your space to speak.
Okay.
It's an item on the agenda.
Thank you. I will address it when we have our discussion of this item. Okay.
There's more folks? No.
Yep. No, that's it. So, would the board like to discuss this? Yeah. Mr. Preciado?
Yeah, so, I kind of outlined my thoughts a little bit last time, but just, like where I'm at. Some of the pieces, so like 1.3.5, provide after-school STEAM enrichment activities. I have a question about that. I want to make sure that that's gonna, the way I read it is that would start by the beginning of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the plan. We were looking at, and I know our board member also asked at the last meeting, certainly looking at monitoring program implementation every month. That's something we have to do in terms of lessons learned. But yes, for STEAM, that is our hope. We're also looking at, later on you'll see in July, of a stronger partnership with Ohlone College, and that might be another place where I'll be able to share more information about that plan.
Okay. And then once we go through the process in terms of making motion. But to your point about a report back, I would suggest that at the first board meeting in December, we report on activities outlined in the LCAP, and that in March or the first interim, so that it aligns with the budget, that there's a report back on the activities outlined. So, for example, in December, we kind of get seen. We have the iPads that were approved, and these are the specific STEAM focus. So what are kind of the success stories or the measurable outcomes? And hopefully those are outlined so that when we report back, we say, this is what we planned to do, this is what we did, and then this is how it affected the children.
Okay, I have several comments I want to make. I really think that there needs to be some idea given in the LCAP of the planning process and the plans that we plan to do to meet the needs of our unduplicated students, as well as success indicators and measures, and to the extent that we've met the goals this year, and how we plan to meet them in the next 2 years, and maybe during your hopefully regular updates to the board. We budgeted $160K for low-income after-school intervention programs and 100 for low-income, and then 100K for English learners. To my mind, extending the day for our most needy students with math and language arts intervention is extremely effective, and yet clearly we had that plan this year and we didn't meet it, I think because we couldn't recruit teachers, but maybe we can be working, or if we can't have having that same problem next year, maybe we could be looking at some of these organizations that provide tutoring after school and contract with them so that we have money that we can spend on intervention and that we spend it. So if we ask our teachers to volunteer, instead of, as was stated in the Q&A section, that we would hope to have these intervention programs in place by the end of October at the latest, maybe we can start making sure we're recruiting in the summer now for teachers and coming up with contingency plans if it's clear that we're not going to be able to get our staff, who are probably burned out at the end of the day, to stay after school. There was a lot of underspent money, and we came up with spending it at the last minute. The Apple product was some of it. But there's no indication of where that underspent money came from, and that all goes toward explaining the actions and our success or not success in carrying out the actions in this year's LCAP. So I hope we look at that and maybe, identify and show in the LCAP where we weren't able to meet. And we make general statements about it, but I think we need to make specific statements. We plan to have 20 students in this program. We were only able to accommodate 10, or whatever that might be. The one issue that really concerns me is the Ohlone for Kids, and I've communicated that to you. There was a $44,000 price tag, apparently, for this program. Anything that's that high in cost is very close to the limit of what staff can approve. But I would hope that you wouldn't say, oh, we don't have to approve it because it's $2,000 less, that you would bring to us the MOU, because I have questions like, if you had brought it to us, I would have said, how are the children being chosen? 25 from each school is what we were told in the Friday update, but it was never presented to the board. Are they underserved kids? These are students whose parents ordinarily would have to pay for summer camp for their kids, and if we have 25 slots and what if they go to, if you target them for only needy students or unduplicated students, what if there's more that want it? Or do you have some kind of a lottery to make it fair and equitable? And it could be, and looks like, a scholarship for these individuals, and scholarships generally don't fall in with ed code. And if it's handled if it's a scholarship and handled as a scholarship, there are rules around how the district has to do that. So I think we did this very quickly because we said, oh, we got to spend the money. And enrichment is great for children. I love enrichment. I think, the more we can do, that's something the parents have been asking for. But most enrichment programs that I'm aware of that are after school or in the summer are paid for. They're not provided through district funds. So anyway, my last suggestion would be, as we go forward, the Berkeley LCAP is, I think, an exemplar of the way we should look at our LCAP, because it has measures. It talks very introspectively about what didn't work and how they're going to adapt it to work. We do some of that, but we do it only in general terms. So I really hope going forward that staff comes back to us and lets us know that there's not going to be money that you find in May and quickly have to spend, that you are tracking the spending, every month, and that you are making adjustments during the year. And if it's a big ticket item, like came to us last time, and please come with a plan and describe the plan to us. Okay? Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Mr. Nguyen moves to approve.
So I'll second with, but I wanted to add an amendment, so I don't know if. So for me, I would move to approve with adding that the staff would report back in the first meeting in December with essentially an LCAP update report, which would include the different items that are outlined in the LCAP and how much has been spent, and then another report back in March or first interim on the activities outlined in the LCAP. So essentially the report back to make sure that's part of the motion. Are you okay with that?
No, I'm just wondering if that's appropriate to be placed into the LCAP, because the LCAP, we're just approving a document that gets submitted.
Yeah, but for me, this is the only time that we
No,
have to outline that process.
Yeah, it's truly valid, but should that be done in in another item, another motion, a resolution or something?
There's no agenda item, so this would be the only way.
Could we do it during board requests and then maybe even make sure that we have full consensus of the board or majority consensus that we do that?
But then that's taken an action item, so I don't know in terms of the process piece that if we would be allowed to direct to do this. And for me, then, if it's not part of the process, then it's not formal, and then that means then
well, you make that comment, and by next December, if that doesn't get done, then in May, don't approve the LCAP.
But that's what I'm trying to do
right?
through this process. Or do you have, is there?
I would suggest part of the larger element here is the board's desire is to how are we doing this monthly? How are we monthly progress monitoring not only the budget but academics? And I think it becomes part of how are we structuring our meetings, and are we spending 60% of our time discussing strategic imperative number 1? So I think I'm fine with an amendment, however you want to do it. I just think that if we really look at how we structure our board meetings and look at this idea of continuous improvement, and as we've kind of outlined in our strategic plan, are we moving the needle on the scores, and how do we know that? I think what I would offer as kind of a suggestion would be to have kind of a common reporting template for each school. So they're telling us, okay, what's your plan? How are you analyzing the data? What's your goal? How are you doing? In how many cycles of intervention have you tried? And what result is it for kids? I know that's something that's already coming, and I think it's something that I know
that's something for
working
next
on it.
year. But what we're approving tonight is the actual LCAP plan.
Right.
And to deviate from that, we'd have to bring it back for substantial changes,
right,
including what you mentioned.
Well, so for me, it's actually the report. If we're so as part of this would be moving to approve the LCAP plan with the additional pieces of getting a formalized like a report. There could be more, but by the first meeting in December, we get that it would be required.
How would you recommend that we incorporate that into the actual report itself, the document that we're accepting and approving? If there's no space in there to do that. It's whether we're approving this document or not, right? And I would say we approve the document with the notion that staff, please listen very carefully to what we're saying, and then if we really are adamant about what you mentioned, perhaps make that as a request at the end and put that as an action item for the next meeting.
I think staff understands what.
And there's also another way we can do it, and that is make it a specific goal. As we finish now the superintendent's evaluation, we're creating goals, and that could be one of the goals that we require.
And because we can't do anything that
I'm okay with
changes the
that. For me,
document.
it's as you know, I'm trying to include these formal processes because, like, on some things we get report backs, and other things I understand there's so many different moving pieces. But for me, it's like this is one of the only opportunities that we have to formally request it as a whole. So I guess I would just note that I would support that. But if these report backs don't happen, then I can support them moving forward.
Okay.
So your original motion stands.
Right. Okay, so the motion was made by Mr. Nguyen and seconded by Mr. Preciado. Please vote. 5 ayes. Thank you. So next, we move on to approval of the 2018-19 budget. We have one member of the public that would like to speak to this, and that's Ms. Cindy Parks.
You've made some substantial cuts this year and had many, many budget meetings. And I would hope that you would continue to keep monitoring the cuts that you have made. And I'm concerned because where you've said you didn't want anything, you wanted adult ed to be self-sustaining, there's this $36,000 price tag that's being transferred with a projection of $11,000 for this year. I'm assuming that that will somehow get worked out. Maybe that won't happen. I don't know. I'm concerned because of that's Fund 11. Fund 12 has been a deficit. It was projected it was going to be $42,000 in the hole. I'm not sure exactly how revenue changed on that and how everything worked. I don't know whether all of a sudden you stopped having to subsidize some of the funding for that, but it looks on paper here, it's going to be in the black, hallelujah, but you need to monitor. There is Fund 17 shows a $22,000 allocation coming from local revenue. It's a new item. I don't know whether that's interest that wasn't ever plugged in before. You did just transfer 3.3 million out of there, so I would have thought that you would have had some interest. Now that you're down to 1.9, you're going to have 22 coming in. I don't know, but clearly the diligence hasn't been here previously to make sure that you're not deficit spending, and I would hope that you would continue to be as diligent as you have been the last year, attending all of the meetings, so that you do have a positive budget. One of the things that does concern me is if you look at the multi-year. Things aren't as rosy, and yet in the pages projecting layoffs, they don't show that. You show the reduction of CSEA is 4 this year, and the reduction of management is 3, yet that does not carry it out over your 3 years. So I just hope that you monitor and keep a close eye on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Would staff like to address this issue before we discuss it?
I think we could have staff answer board questions in the discussion. I think that's probably more appropriate.
Okay, do we have any?
So, is there any other members of the public? And then we'll close.
No, we don't have any other members of the public. No one has put a request in. Do you have a request?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. So, to who are we directing this to?
I'd like Kim and Lowell to step to the podium, please. Lola's with the firm that's been assisting us in absence of our CBO.
Okay.
Help me with your last name again, Lowell, I'm sorry. Shira. And Kim, Lola can help answer some of your questions.
Perfect. Yeah. So my question was going to be around the adult education fund, because I know we specifically said that it should be funding itself, and that in light of cutting all the different pieces from the students, that we felt that this program needs to be on its own. So I don't understand why there's this interfund transfer for $11,000 for the next year's budget, and then we actually spent. So I don't understand what happened there. It's on page 39.
Right. No, we spoke to this issue. Part of I'll let you guys finish, but I think part of the initial dilemma we had is the staff didn't have time to develop a plan in order to get to self-sufficiency. We're going to be working with staff more closely now to be able to get to that, but we felt that because the programming that they've worked on for next year is something that is still valuable to the community, we wanted to make sure they had an opportunity to get to plan to get to self-sufficiency. I would let you guys kind of respond with the numbers and where we are with that.
So adult ed has two sources of income. One of them is the Looney Consortium block grant, and we will actually have a fund balance at the end of this year with that. The program that is struggling is the community classes. We do anticipate around a $36,000 contribution from general fund. That's why you see the net of 11,000, because you have a general fund, you have a general fund contribution, and then you have the Looney Consortium fund balance at the end, which is going to be around 26,000. So that's where that 11 is. So the piece we're working on this summer with the administrator on the program is to come up with a plan, whether it's increase in fees, minimum class size, combination of those, number of sessions offered, whatever we can come up that we think is going to work, working with the teachers of those programs. These programs have been in Newark for over 30 years. They're very valued by the community. So we'd like to make that effort. There will be no summer classes, so that will give us the summer to work before we get to classes again in the fall.
I guess, sorry, and I don't have a poker face, but my frustration is that this is part of it. I mean, I don't take away from the fact that all of these programs that we offer are valuable, and that it's super important. But when we're talking about things affecting like the class size ratio, or things where we've said one thing and we've made it clear that it will be zero, it will pay for itself, and that's the goal. Then you need to have a plan, and I know it's focusing on this particular piece, but I think it's indicative of what we've been doing for a long time, which is why it's really frustrating. So for me, I'm struggling with this to be like, you know what, 2017-18, this is where we're at, but for the 2018-19, like we did last time, for me would be making it zero, and that means that you'd have to raise the fees or figure it out. And all these programs are valuable, but then we have this conversation that we're saying that, look, we value the kids, but we're going to increase class sizes, but then we're going to continue these programs for the community, and that's where we have to have the conversation. Everything is important. I know it's only, in the big scheme of things, it's only 11,000, but then that's what happens or from my perspective, we're doing that a lot more. It's like, oh, it's a small amount here, and then all of a sudden it's a huge amount. So can the program function by increasing the fees and zeroing it out for the 2018-2019? That would be my question.
That's what we have to find out. We have to find out if a plan that will allow us to do that is a viable plan. Superintendent Sanchez did mention that time has been an issue. If you recall, our administration has been changing from year to year at that site. We do have an administrator who is with us and working on this, and we're hoping that we'll have complete resolution If not, then the programs will probably have to go away, but we're hoping to make the effort to see if we can save them this summer.
So the only thing is we're approving it now, though, we're approving it for the whole year, so, right, like we've approved, now that there's no incentive to, or at least there's less of an incentive because now you have those resources as opposed to, from my perspective, we zeroed out, we've already made that commitment that we were gonna zero it out as much as it hurts. I mean, then we zero it out, and then if it's that important to the community, we explain to the community, like, we are really, this is where we're at. Let's do some fundraisers. Let's figure it out. Like, because these $11,000 that we're transferring in from the general fund is $11,000 that doesn't go to kids in the classroom.
We certainly can do that. I think we certainly, if the board wishes to zero it out, I'm happy to notify staff that it's going to go away.
Okay.
I do think what I can tell you is, in this instance, and as I briefed, and part of it, I might have to go back into executive session to give you more detail, was they weren't given an opportunity to develop a plan, and now Kim and Lowell are trying to pick up the pieces, and we still can get to zero potentially, but we have to engage staff and try to come up with a plan now. But I'm happy to take that responsibility and say I'll work with them to try to get to self-sustaining by next year. And maybe we won't have to do this. We can stay on top of it. But if the board chooses to just say no, we're amending this and we're going to zero, I can deliver that message as well.
And that's the piece that.
But there will be fallout. There will be fallout.
And that's the piece I struggle with, though. But it's because if we make certain things, there's always going to be fallout for every single particular program. So that's the hard part of like, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's where I'm struggling.
That's easier for us, but it's harder for the community and it's harder for teachers. I think what we're asking for is some time to try to resolve this with staff. But for now, we have to approve the budget. So if it's zero or if it's 11,000, either way, we're okay with.
Yeah. Remember,
Mr. Rodriguez and then Mr. Nguyen.
I just want to be clear that I support, adult ed 100%. I think that a school district that doesn't offer adult ed is not a full school district or a complete full school, in my opinion. That being said, last year we were having this discussion and we said that we would ask that they would be zeroed out. And to me, it's the school district's responsibility, and it starts with us as well as the administration, to make sure that the message gets over to the school that school's got to, they have to charge accordingly. They have to increase their tuition or, per participant. Years ago, we had more offerings there, and I think an adult school, like there was a DMV class that people would take. So that's another issue, another area we could look at and how we can bring in additional revenues. So the school district, in my opinion, has a responsibility to work with the adult school to make sure that things are in place to charge more for having the classes, and then make sure that that everybody understands that we have to zero out this program and we have to do everything we can. So there's got to be a plan from the school district, and we discussed that earlier, to the adult school on how to make this happen. And I am frustrated also, Member Priscilla, because it's deja vu. We talked about this last year, and we thought it was being taken care of, but it isn't. So I think it would be a big mistake if we cut the funding off. I think we have to do our due diligence and make sure that we have a plan in place and share with the adult school on how we can make this happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure why things didn't happen this year, but for myself, given the scope of the program and the really relatively small amount of the deficit, I don't see a reason why the district staff working with the adult school staff can't bring this under control. It's certainly not something that's totally out of control. It's something that's should be within our ability to bring under control relatively quickly. I don't know why it hasn't happened already, but I think there's been staff turnover that's been mentioned to me at least as part of the issue, and that given a little bit more stability here, I think you'll be pleased moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen?
Can I offer a compromise? Perhaps we budget for 50% of what we were intending to budget. That gives them a 6-month kind of soft ramp up to get fiscally solvent instead of pulling the rug from underneath them, so to speak. And so maybe that will give them some leeway to augment or raise funds.
I guess I would ask, is that, you see that as being feasible?
I believe so. But 6 months, certainly.
Yeah.
To bring back a plan, no question.
I mean, just put in their budget for the next 6 months, which would constitute half of what we're allocating, and that'll give them time to come up with a program or do what they need to do to raise
Yeah,
funds.
I can't see why not. Would you?
No, my feeling is we should have it for our first session in fall.
Ms. Crocker?
Are we finished with that piece? Okay, I'm talking about second year and third year in the projection. The fact that we are 2 million more expenses than we have income. I thought we were down to 0. It was going to be a balanced budget, even though there's money in a balance, unless we're talking about encumbered money that's going to be spent. I'm wondering why that 2 million was allowed to stay there.
Right. Well, I can tell you what that 2 million consists of. It's really just 3 items that we're talking about, and it would be looking at how we can deal with that. There are different ways of dealing with each component. Really, the 3 components are benefit increases, and you all know about the STRS and PERS, significant increases moving forward. That's $900,000 right there. The next large piece is the increase in the restricted, what we call 5,000 accounts, which is the services and operating expenses. We need to do some more research on that. That's largely, more than likely, special education. There's been a lot of fluctuation in the services and operating expenses in special ed, in your restricted accounts over the last couple of years. And we need to really do some more research on that, work with our HR department in terms of how much they've been able to actually staff schools with employees in the areas of teacher or psychologists and speech therapists, or to what extent is the district going to have to contract out those services at extraordinarily high prices. So that's another issue that we'll be working on. Another one, the really smallest piece of this is textbook adoption, which is an additional $300,000 currently budgeted for 1920. So those 3 items together are over $2 million. And we'll be working on what we can do to reduce the impact of each of those, or what budget cuts might be necessary, because really there's not a whole lot we can do about benefits, STRS and PERS, but there are some things we can do about the other areas that we've talked about. And then finally, another piece of good news is that it looks like the budget that will be signed by the governor does provide more revenue to Newark than what's currently in this adopted budget. And we'll be getting back to you, we're required to get back to you within 45 days after the budget's approved, to show you what the impact of that state budget is on Newark, both in the 18-19 school year, but it'll have an effect on 19-20 and 21 as well, as we compute the LCF out those 3 years. So I think over the next few months we'll get a better handle on that $2 million in 1920. I'm hoping it goes down. I hope that staffing stays solid in terms of position control, expenditure controls that have been mentioned here several times tonight are maintained by the district office, especially by the business office. and that we'll be able to move forward to 1920 with not nearly the deficit that we're currently showing.
If we did
And
not
a lot
have...
of things need to really be diligent in maintaining the budget. I'm not saying there's no problem, but what I'm saying is I think the problems as they appear today appear to be solvable.
When we look at the history of budgeting, that's been the answer that has happened most every time when we are in deficit spending. There's a structural budget, a certain amount that we have to keep the doors open. And so wherever we have to cut, and if more money comes, we can always spend that. But I think the budget has to be balanced with, unless there is a one-time kind of thing. For example, you're talking about the 300K textbook. That's a one-time thing, and so that may be something that would be, because we need to have the textbooks, something that would be doable, but not everyday expenses. And whether we like it or not, we're paying more money for the benefits, and that has to be figured out in the budget, so the budget is balanced with that increase being there. And I think that's been the frustration that we've had as a board, is that the last minute the budget comes, and then we're caught in a situation where we have a time, and the budget has to be approved, and the best of intentions, and it's happened sometimes where, yeah, there was no spending of the balance, but other times it didn't happen. So I think that when we do the budgeting, it's got to be budgeted with the worst case scenario, not the best.
Yeah,
So
and this is not a best. This adopted budget is, in my view, not a best case scenario at all, but it's one that gets us started and working in the right direction.
Yeah, well, I think that I guess the frustration from the board is the fact that it needs to be balanced when it's brought to us. And then at that point, we can always add. We can always spend more money. I don't know anyone that doesn't know how to do that. But it's very hard to cut once it's there. Once someone's there and it seems like the program's there, or whatever it is that we had to cut. And I don't think taking from our balance is the answer. Because we as a board had asked that we have twice the required 3% in terms of a contingency fund. So that means we would have 6%.
Well, it would certainly be something that the business office should be able to do quite easily, is bring to you what would need to happen in order to bring that 1920 into balance, as well as keeping 1819 in balance.
Well, the 1819 seems to be very close.
Yes. Yeah, 1819.
So next year is very close, right. But it's the one that's out, and I understand that you are projecting, and right. So it's imperfect. Right. And I understand that budgets change and the governor changes, and that's all stuff that's there. But I think that we have to have the worst case scenario in terms of budgeting, not the best. And I know you say it's not the best, but it's $2 million more for one for 1920, and it's $200,000 for the 2021. So
well, we can certainly work with the superintendent on when we can bring back a plan that shows you what we recommend in order to bring that into balance.
Right. I think that the balanced budget for 1819 speaks to the hard work that staff and the board has done all year to balance a budget. The increase in STRS and PERS of $900,000 and the increase in probably special ed of $900,000 is every district that I've heard of is having problems with STRS and PERS, and they're having trouble with special ed. It just seems that we can't wait until next April to start talking about how we're going to balance a budget in 1920. We have to start now to working on how we're going to do that. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, please. And so I appreciate the time you spent, both of you spent with me today explaining all of this. And I just think it's commendable what the business office has done on bringing this budget forward. Thank you. Would I get a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Nguyen moves to approve. Mr. Rodriguez seconds. Please vote.
So I thought we were, are you moving to approve with the as is or with the 5,500?
With the amendment of the 50% funding for adult ed as we discussed.
and Mr. Rodriguez.
I'll take my second back. I don't think we should do that. I think we should just approve the whole year as staff is recommending.
I'll second it then.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Nguyen and seconded by Ms. Crocker with a minor amendment of half of the budgeted deficit for adult ed be removed by mid-year. Please vote. Five ayes, thank you. Oh, 4 ayes. Member Rodriguez votes no. Next, we move on to 10.3, ratification of the tentative agreement between the Newark Unified School District and the Newark Teachers Association. Mr. Knoop.
I hope I don't get accused of going in circles because now I'm kind of, First of all, I just want to congratulate that the budget is approved, and it shows that I was skeptical that this budget could be done out in time, but I was wrong about that, and I think it's a really great job, and the numbers this year look really good, and hopefully next year this will be better, but so anyway. So the NTA contract, and so basically, isn't it great that we have transparency? Right? And I'm sure everybody is for transparency. And so I looked at the public disclosure document, and it says 0.5% stipend. I think that's the terminology used, 0.5% stipend. Now, I just want to make sure if I read it correctly, okay? So it says in that public disclosure document on page 3 that LCAP money will be used for that. And I just want to make sure it says the current year, so that I'm not confused by, the year we're currently in, but that is actually for, whatever, October, November, that the LCAP that was just approved, 0.5% goes to NTA. My concern is, one is like, we have a lot of Me Too clauses left and right, so, once NTA gets it, and, contracted employees want it too, and before you know it, everybody wants it because somebody else gets it. And I think there's a philosophical question as well, of course. If you look at LCAP money is to improve the scores of our kids. Now, I can imagine something with that when you have teachers, or keeping teachers, but, let's say a CBO, for the sake of argument, if you give a CBO a stipend, does that really help the kids' performance, So anyway, I just repeat the question. You just approve an LCAP document that doesn't supply any information about giving 0.5% to NTA to certificate it. And as far as I remember in the meetings, that was not discussed, it was taken out. Instead, we were going to have counselors for that. And so my question is, am I reading this document wrong? Or is there, yes? And I think transparency is really great. If the board knows the answer or staff knows the answer, we need to be transparent, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to this?
I'd like to move that we approve the ratification of tentative agreement between Newark Unified School District and Newark Teachers Association, also known as NTA.
I'll second.
Mr. Rodriguez moves, Mr. Preciado seconds. I would like staff to respond, if possible, to whether there is a 0.5% in the LCAP supplemental funds for that contract.
No, I'll have to look at the form Mr. Knoop referred to. My understanding is last year, yes, the retention stipend was paid out of 0.500, which is what we call our LCAP. This year, my understanding and the way it's been budgeted is that the stipend will be tied to the way the employee is paid. So if the employee is paid out of 0.500, that is where the stipend will hit. But everyone else, it's going to fall on how that individual is coded and paid. So I will take a look at the document Mr. Knoop is referred to.
So is the way it's presented to the county office correct?
Yes.
Oh, that's correct. Okay, I'd have to relook at the wording to make sure that's what it says.
Yes, I echo what Ms. Lola said. So the only time that it would be paid out of the LCAP, it depends on how the person is paid for their work.
Okay, so
Yeah. But this previous year, we did have it.
the previous year was from there. Okay, please vote. Five ayes, thank you. Congratulations, NTA.
There's nobody here.
Yes, there is.
Timothy's here.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What am I chopping?
That hat confused me.
There you go.
He's hiding behind the TV, Ray.
You gonna come up or what?
No, well, that's during that time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, next we move on to the agreement with ADIS Architects for a district-wide facilities master plan and deferred maintenance plan. Superintendent, would you like to introduce this?
Sure, and we do have representatives from ADIS here.
Oh, wait, we do have someone to speak to this
Oh, please.
from the public. I'm
Yes.
sorry, Mr. Newt.
Hi, just a couple of comments. I was privy to the advisory committee, and thank you for selecting me on that. And I think that was a really great experience. And, I think ADIS is I was very impressed, and I think they're going to do a good job, I think. But I got a little bit of a sticker shock. I looked at the earlier numbers, and then, $515,000 is a lot of money, and we're not a very wealthy district. So if we could try to, I don't ask for lower billing rates, of course, but if there are certain things that are duplicated in terms of assessments and things like that, I think, that would be really great. But I think it's also great that we are starting a process of community engagement, that we truly want to get a process where we first make an assessment, a technical assessment of what are the possibilities. Should we build another school? Should we not build another school? Or are there alternatives that come out in that process? So a technical assessment that we know the cost benefits of all the options that are going to be presented. And that we then have a next stage where community is involved and stakeholders are involved. And we, together with the district, the board, and the stakeholders and the community, we work towards solutions that work for everybody. And, I think that's the best model. I think from the get-go, I think the district would want to make sure that the final decision is the board, with the district, and that the community is not confused about that. The community does not decide, but it should be a process where everybody is involved and works towards something that is, beneficial for all. So I hope this is going to be a real positive endeavor. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Superintendent?
I'd like the team from ADIS to step forward, if they would. And I would suggest that they would field questions from the board at this time. Just, before we start, would you just introduce yourselves and title, and then I would like the board to have a chance to ask you questions.
Sure. Thank you very much, board trustees and staff, executive staff. My name is Anna Harrison. I'm the senior design strategist at ADIS Architects.
And my name is Andrew Seymour. I'm a project manager with ADIS Architects.
Okay, board, do we have questions?
Was there a presentation?
The proposal's been in there. I think
but they don't have a separate presentation tonight.
I don't believe so, no.
Considering the cost, we did ask that you come here this evening, and I have letters from Mr. Doe, who's the head of the organization, and I have enough so that the public can also see the copies. Could I have one more?
Oh, sure. Is that enough?
Yeah. I think, it might be helpful if I read relevant parts, because I did ask, Mr. Wynn and I were an ad hoc committee. The process we used was to work with the superintendent to again look at all 5 proposals that came before us. We had a committee of Mr. Simon, Mr. Knoop, Mr. Wynn, myself, the superintendent, and a member from the city, assistant city manager. And we carefully read all 5 proposals, and we looked at 2 proposals as standing above the rest. And we invited ADIS in and one other proposer in, and they spent considerable time answering our questions, and we asked them to ensure us that there was going to be a very robust community engagement process. This letter from Mr. Doe, which I'm sure you can respond to as well, talks about what happened with what we asked you to do. We asked you to remove the Energy Master Plan. Mr. Doe's letter says, yes, we did, but work that was in the Energy Master Plan also pertains to the Master Facilities Plan, and so some of that cost actually is being done anyway. So there was a savings of removing that Energy Master Plan, but it wasn't the entire amount. Then, because we asked for multiple meetings beyond what was in your original proposal, and I believe this letter says that there was, they included 7 meetings, 25 campus-specific workshops. They're now intended to be more robust based on design thinking principles and methodologies. And maybe you can speak to the increase of costs in terms of the request that we asked you to have a more robust community engagement. And Mr. Wynn, since you were part of the ad hoc committee, do you want to add anything to what I just said?
No, just I was a little surprised at the sticker shock myself, alluding to what Mr. Knoop had mentioned. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to closely examine the scope of work at this juncture and see if there's any kind of duplication or any elements that perhaps staff or district can do and parse out that can get this pricing to more friendly terms, so to speak.
So I can't really speak to what we might cut out of it. I can tell you that we designed the engagement process per the superintendent's request. We have planned incredibly robust stakeholder engagement with each and every one of the school sites, including visioning and design thinking, and the purpose of that is really to create empathy among different stakeholders and get everybody's diverse buy-in. So when we realized how critically important that was for the district based on the strategic planning and the STEAM district that the board has taken a directive on, we basically had to up our game in terms of what we could offer you. And so we feel like we're offering you the very best and appropriate program, and given that, of course,
is this best and appropriate or best and final?
It is by no means best and final. It is best and appropriate.
Mr. Preciado?
So I was going to ask, because one of the most important pieces that we've outlined from the board is the robust stakeholder engagement, but without kind of seeing the presentation of what that looks like, if you can explain what, to you in your mind, robust stakeholder engagement meetings look like.
Yes, so we went over an outline with the superintendent of what we propose. And at this point, we have 2 meetings each with the elementary schools. We have 3 meetings with the junior high school and 4 meetings with the high school. The first meetings are, and then prior to that, we have the district-wide kickoff. That meeting, which is ideally with stakeholders from the entire school district, is a half-day event, and we design a series of activities that lead into a guiding principles and a statement of vision, along with a deep understanding amongst all stakeholders of everybody's individual points of view. We've done this with several districts now for the last couple of years. We're refining and customizing the process for your district. That first meeting will yield sort of the blueprint that we then take to the individual schools, and each individual school has an opportunity to customize and respond to the guiding principles. The second meeting with each school is design thinking, and if you've ever experienced it, it's an incredibly dynamic process. We adapt the Stanford D School process, so we go through the empathy, define, ideate, prototype test. Everybody builds prototypes of ideal learning environments. And what we find is that when we go through these processes with school districts, they become very engaged, very excited, very bought in to the vision for the district, and it really creates a very welcoming environment for improvements to happen in the future.
So I guess I have some follow-up. So because it sounds like they would be great meetings, but if we had examples or like specific examples, not just about the meeting, but like sample outcomes from the meeting. So I know that would be at least helpful for me to kind of see if this is the process, what are some of the outcomes that would happen? So that's one part. The other piece is I don't see like what type of community outreach or communications plan that you would enforce, because great to have this amazing setup for these meetings, but if no one's there or the same people, then we kind of lose from my perspective, the robust aspect of it.
Yeah, and we do rely on the district's participation in getting the word out and making selections or recommendations and invitations to stakeholder representatives. I apologize for not having a presentation prepared. I have presentations that show active engagement, stakeholder engagement processes, and people building models and outcomes and data. We gather a lot of data, we crunch the data, we come up with analysis. These district-wide facilities guiding principles we've used in other districts, in Mr. Nguyen's districts as well, and it created the entire master plan. So this is a very important piece of the master plan, and I'd be happy to supply you with a presentation.
I guess, yeah, from my perspective, for $500,000 without kind of seeing what again, we're having this conversation about the measurable outcomes, right? Like of what are samples that you would have. It's really hard for me to kind of see, unless, to see what those outcomes look like. Yeah. Unless you've seen samples.
Well, there was a lot of detail in the proposals, and we saw pictures of people doing the work during the meetings. And maybe Mr. Nguyen, you're next anyway. Maybe you could describe that process as you experienced
it was a positive experience as far as the process and the community engagement, so I can't speak to that. And as far as the stakeholder engagement, the robustness, it was good. I chimed in because I wanted to speak to the comment earlier about, we have 80's proposal. It's best and appropriate, but at this point it's not best and final. I think what we need to do is, and looking at your timeline, you have authorization to proceed, assuming June, and the kickoff in June, also the walkthroughs in June. The June timeframe for our district, June and July is like a lull or dead month, so to speak, because we're out for summertime. What may be more appropriate would be the kickoff and initial walks and whatnot to begin in August as we're ramping up from return from summer. With that being said, let's take the opportunity in the next month or so to get to best and final, and so that we can we can honor the comments that Mr. Noob made, because I mean, being part of CBOC, he was a part of the group, but he did make the comment as far as the sticker shock. So let's try to get to best and final. Let's have perhaps the authorization to proceed at the next board meeting, which would be July 31st. And then at that point, have the timeline kind of pushed out by a month with the kickoff, and then the walk commencing in August would be my recommendation.
That makes sense to me. Ms. Crocker?
I have a question. What was the original proposal, and what was the amount of the original proposal? Was there a
I believe it was
figure?
450 or?
No, it was over 500.
Yeah, it was closer to
591.
Yeah, it was close
and
to
it's
6.
now 515.
So it's actually cut back.
Well, no, but it was 591 including the energy plan, though.
Correct.
Right. So
And how much is the energy plan? Was that going to pay for itself? Was the energy plan?
In kind of shorthand, we roughly doubled the amount of time that we're putting into the stakeholder engagement meetings. We doubled the amount of meetings and time, not the amount of time meetings, but the amount of time. So that's what you see as the quote unquote sticker shock is.
So when we come out of this, we will have what?
So one of the things that we are finding with districts is that we achieve mind shift in terms of the stakeholders' awareness of the impact of the learning environment upon curriculum and curriculum upon the learning environment. And our stakeholders start to understand the synergy between space and learning, and it becomes, they become educated clients from our point of view. They become very deeply committed to how to use the learning environment as a complete piece of curriculum that entire campuses. So we're affecting kind of a deep change in the way that people view space.
So you're looking at taking, say, a K-6 school and doing restructuring, or looking at what we have and what needs to be done. I'm thinking in terms of what kind of product. If I were teaching at Snow School, what would I expect would be a difference?
So you might see an embracing of learning communities. You might see more embracing of co-teaching. You might see flexible furniture environments that include spaces for deep introspection, spaces for performance, spaces for collaboration. You might see much more integration of the outdoor environments and use of the outdoor environments, activation of the outdoor environments. And what we do, our design thinking prompt is to describe your favorite learning experience. And what we're finding is that everybody has these deep memories of learning experiences that were very project-based, very hands-on, that required them to move around, required them to have variety in their space. And we watched the light bulbs go off in people's minds when they understand that we can affect learning outcomes by how we design space, and then they start to actively design space. So we're not telling them how to do it. We're creating this fertile environment for a mind shift, and then they grab it.
And so we need to have money available to support what is happening at say, Snow School.
Yes, and we talk about that these shifts happen. We build trust. We build some information. We give information about pedagogy and curriculum that's going on around the world, about space that's going on around the world, and then we ask people to apply it to themselves personally. So the process that we've designed for you is very specific. Each campus has their own set of meetings. We purposely have not grouped campuses at this point. We've wanted to give each campus their own space to experience this. We want to spend enough time with the bigger campuses, the junior high and the high school, so they have a real opportunity to embrace this concept of space and curriculum being iterative.
So when we talk about a facilities plan, we're not talking about the structure of the roof or the walls. but rather the utilization of what is there. So you're not concerned about the health of what is there, but rather how to use the space that is there.
Well, so the deferred maintenance piece, the safety of the schools is in the master plan as well.
Okay.
So I sort of deal with the pedagogical vision and how the space is optimally being used for teaching and learning. And Andrew deals with the roofs.
And how is this being paid for in the budget? Is this from Russian money? Okay. Thank you.
Mr.
May I?
Superintendent?
And I think it's kind of back to Member Wynn's point of best and final, but I would not want to limit the team to do it the way we want them to do it. I think they've been through this process more than us, and that's why we've identified them as the person we want to do it. So my question is, what's the number that doesn't give sticker shock? Because I don't want to go through another exercise and come back and say, well, could it be a little more? Could it be a little less? I'd like to put it to rest.
Hold on, that puts us in a bad negotiating spot, Superintendent.
Right. But what I'm saying is, well, but transparency. I don't need to tell me now, but I'd like to know that if we're going to engage in this, because part of the planning in the summer was going to be a lot of work with the district to kind of map it all out, get a lot of feedback, get to know our primary source documents, get to know where we've been, where we're going. So I think that, and it's not appropriate to say here in public, but I would like to know what is the number, because I don't want to waste ADIS's time if it's, if it's within 20,000, 40,000, 50,000, because what it'll be is lightening the depth of planning that we gave to them. And the most important thing that we talked about as a committee was we want a deep, robust way to do this. So now we're saying dial it back a little bit. We can do that, but then we're going to consolidate schools by region. I mean, I'm not sure what that would be, but I'm just trying to figure out.
So the
sooner we can start, the better. Is all.
From my experiences in dealing with construction and architecture and design and whatnot, I think best and final doesn't necessarily mean it's a scale back of scope. Best and final is how far each entity is willing to move to get an agreement.
Right. And what I would say is, my concern is, if we had staff to do a lot of this, we would already be doing it. Our staff is already over kind of burdened on a lot of stuff. We don't have a lot of this expertise in-house to take on this work. I think that some of that is shoveling more onto staff here to do, and I worry about that. So I think that, in the appropriate way, if you give me an idea of what we're looking for, I can work with them to get to something by the end of July that is more comfortable.
Let me give you an example. In their billing sequence, there's a billing charge of $40,000 for the act of billing, right? Mm. So it's the act of billing is certainly not a tangible thing. So, like I said, although I made the comment previous about parsing out and to see what staff is able to take on, et cetera. I think the best and final is exactly what it is, best and final, and see what both sides have to offer to each other to get the deal done.
Right.
Mr. Preciado?
So for me, it wasn't more about the cost, it was more about, so we have two documents as opposed to like a kind of a presentation of outlining, like, so we've been talking about making sure that we're using our resources wisely, but if I saw like the presentation of what the measurable outcomes were and kind of how we did before in terms of like the full-on different pieces, I would be more inclined to support it, because for me, if I approved it like at this time, it would be like, okay, to the community, yeah, we had two documents, and here's the documents, and this is how we decided to spend $500,000, as opposed to here's the sample documents of their work and their which I really appreciate your in terms of the design thinking and referencing the D-School and thinking about how to kind of engage stakeholders. I really do. I just seeing some tangible kind of outcomes as opposed to just the proposal for me would have been helpful for moving forward like at this time.
And I would like to respond. I think part of that was, the direction we got was that the subcommittee would meet and do some of that vetting, and we've done that. We've done some of that vetting, and I think that we're pretty comfortable with Ada's ability to do the public engagement. Now, in hindsight, should we have done that as a whole group? We could have. But that's not kind of the direction we got from the board. And
You're right. No,
so
and again, I trust the vetting.
that's all.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I trust the vetting. It just would have been like, here's a sample, like we did for the other
Right,
ones.
right.
Like we had the other two groups. We had like their 50-page document of here's samples of what it would look like, and saying like, well, look, I mean,
And we could still get that. I mean,
Well, we already
could still
have
get-
it. We already have that
Right.
in, all of us.
We did that
looked-
in the ad hoc, and that's what we.
We poured over their.
And then she's like, so I guess for me it would be sharing it for the community, right? So like, I don't know if there's, I mean, we can't add it now, but as a,
We could share things tomorrow. That's not a problem.
okay, yeah.
That's not a problem.
Because for me, it's not, it's.
Did you want to say something?
Well, I always carry around like pictures of things in action, and this is not, I don't know if I'm allowed to show this to anybody, but this is a little sample of some of our stakeholder groups in action, and this could be turned into a presentation that I could email to you tomorrow. We have so much
We can
data.
post it on our website. and we
Post that on the website, yeah.
We can email it to all employees.
I mean, so then for me, then I guess trusting that and getting that, making sure that the community gets access to that as soon as possible, then from my perspective, I would be okay then moving forward and trusting your recommendation moving forward at this point.
I'm comfortable, Mr. Rodriguez wanted to speak and then I'll.
No, just quickly. I think we told ourselves that we were going to try to, as we looked at every item, we were going to work ourselves through it, and we're not doing that. But thank you for coming. We assigned, or we asked 2 board members to be on the committee to look at these proposals. And sometimes you have to trust the people that you actually say, would you go to these meetings? And I have to rely on your recommendation based on the meetings and everything. Nobody wants to spend $500,000 on anything, okay? And, but this is something that's needed. It's money that doesn't impact our budget, because this is money strictly from Russian funds that we can use to pay for this. And I'm excited about doing it. And so I have to lean on Member Thomas and Member Nguyen to tell us, hey, this is a good way to go, and let's get this done. And that's what I like to do.
I have another
Let's
question.
get this done.
Yes, Ms. Carter?
Will we need any more information about facilities planning before we can make decisions about what we're going to be doing and going on? In other words, will this give us enough information to proceed with completing and looking to plan for whether we need a new school, this kind of thing? Is this going to give us that kind of basic information?
And some of that's embedded. I'm going to allow, tell me your name, Andrew, to respond to some of that, because some of that's embedded in.
So I guess the thing is, we'd be going through and we'd be looking at the existing conditions of your schools and stuff, understanding what walls and what roofs and stuff like that, what are the conditions of them, and then bringing that as a part of another piece to the stakeholder engagement. So once we go through that process, we go, okay, what are some of the outcomes of this group? We compare it to some of the facilities that we've assessed, and then okay, what's reasonable, I mean, closing schools is always a difficulty thing, but taking into consideration some of the information that we go through this process, comparing it to what we're seeing out there, and then making sure that, okay, what we're recommending, is that tangible?
So we're not looking to have to do this on another level someplace else in terms of facilities. A construction company coming in other words, this will take care of getting us that information that we need so we can make decisions.
Yes.
Because I get tired of having people come in and analyzing, and then we look at it, and then we have somebody else that comes in and says something different.
Can you ask your question again, rephrase about the area 3 and 4, because I think that was.
Well, I think that we are looking for an expansion, a possible expansion to another school, and so I think this is part of what we need to have some answers for, in terms of making decisions about whether in truth another school is needed, looking at what our projected enrollment might be. So I mean, those are all pieces that I think that if those are answers, if we're going to get concrete answers or information that we can make decisions on, then I think that perhaps it's money well spent. Yes. But if we have to go someplace else for more information, then I'm saying it's too much.
Well, so I'll make my last comments regarding this, but I think it's clear that the district wants to work with ADIS, and you've proven to be the group that has performed, and through the evaluation process, we want to work with you. But I think we both know and understand that, again, this 515, 796, is not best and final. Okay?
I'm wondering if there's a way that we can do some of this work offline to arrive at a best and final more quickly than waiting until July. If we could do it with the superintendent and the ad hoc committee, and bring back, and maybe even have a special meeting to approve it at whatever the best and final figure is.
I won't be back in the state until July. I leave tomorrow on a plane.
Yeah, I think most of us.
We can do it as soon as I get back.
I'm
And I'm happy with you two meeting with ADIS in the meantime. I'm fine with that.
So is there a way for us to approve a ceiling on the contract, and then, I don't know how it's.
And the ceiling would be the 515.
I think you pull it and you bring it back in July, or you approve it. Either way is,
I think we should just approve it.
Yes, thank you.
In good faith that there will be a best and final.
I think Mr. Doe would be very happy to work with you.
Okay.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion with that best and final verbiage in it. Mr. Nguyen?
Mr. Nguyen, why don't you?
I'll move to approve in good faith that there will be a best and final negotiation process to get us to a better price point.
Second.
And it was seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Please vote. Five ayes. Thank you very much.
Hopefully the other items don't take as long. We'll be here at midnight.
Well, I think this was $500,000 is a very important thing to spend time on.
The recommendation coming from both of you was mixed messages, so.
Yeah. Mixed message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was, I think, about the price only, not the quality of the work. Okay, next we go to 10.5, which is the agreement with Rhineland School Business Consulting for our interim help with the business.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen votes to approve. I got to clear this. And Mr. Rodriguez, did you second it?
Yes.
Okay, is there any discussion? No. Okay, please vote.
Excited. Looks like he's going to be great.
And, well, I may make
Five
comment
ayes.
afterwards. It won't affect the vote. They are willing and able to stay with us until we're able to identify the next CBOC. I'm sorry, CBO. CBO.
And speaking of the CBOC,
move to approve.
we have moved to approve 10.6, member resignation, Ms. Navarro. Is there a second? Second. Okay, Mr. Rodriguez.
Mr. Preciado, seconds.
Mr. Preciado seconds. Mr. Nguyen made the motion. Please vote.
Thank you.
5 ayes. Thank you. Next, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report.
Move to approve.
Second.
Don't we want to have a presentation?
Well, you can move a second and then.
Oh, okay.
I thought we would hear the presentation and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we have the presentation?
My apologies.
Short and final.
The Citizens Bond Oversight Committee is happy to be here this evening and present the 2016-2017 annual report. Mr. Kerry Knoop is going to present the report, our findings and recommendations.
Can I just say that I appreciate all the members here and all that have been involved. You guys appreciate it. even before the report.
Everybody's here except one member, so 6 out of 7 are here. Thank you. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm still going to do that presentation. I'll be brief with the numbers because basically, as you know, it's for 2016-17, so we always work a year behind. You know, like last year we did a lot of the play structures and so, but now it's basically roofing and HVACs. So let me go through it. Yeah, myself. So here's an overview of the sale of the bonds and the premiums. There is one thing I would like to highlight, and that's item footnote number 3 on this slide. So there was an error with respect to the interest that was wrongly allocated. So initially, a lot of interest was allocated to measure B. There's still some measure B money in the fund 21. And that was corrected, but the error was found after the books were closed. So, you know, there's a journal entry for the next year to correct that. And if you have any questions on the slide, just let me know. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. So these are the expenditures and the fund balance. Of course, right now we have a lot less. I think it's 11.4 approximately that we have left in Measure G, 11.4 million. As I said before, it's HVACs and roofs that we spend. Just a little bit on technology. You know, the usual overhead. The construction management is Vanner, and some other things. It's typical. I put a couple of slides we put a couple of slides together showing what we have spent over the years since the inception of the bond, and you can see here the charts by school. Let me know if I'm going too fast.
So yeah. The video surveillance, I was trying to, you said by school, I was trying to find, was that at the high school, the video surveillance?
Video surveillance.
Oh, I guess it's non-site specific.
It's right, 7,242.
Was that the high school?
I heard junior high and high school, yeah. I think we have a bunch of cameras also in the elementary school, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, yeah. And as one of the things that we did, you know, when the CBOC has a tour, last time we actually checked whether they worked. So we put ourselves in the picture, and then Larry got us the extracts. Because, you know, sometimes the problem with surveillance equipment is when you really need it, people say, oh, it didn't work, or we haven't, you know. So we wanted to check it, and indeed it worked fine.
So that's at the end of the presentation, that picture?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, here's the non-site specific breakdown. And again, I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary. It's a very simple year that we had. So this is the most important thing that we as a CBOC do, is every year we have to say whether we think the district is in compliance with the language of the bond. And this year, as all the other years, it's a positive. So we are positive that the district is in compliance using the monies for the bond. We do, however, have a couple of findings and suggestions and comments. The first one is probably one that you've seen before, no deferred maintenance plan, and that's hopefully something that's going to be addressed with the future contractor, presumably ADIS, to work this out. And then there's something related to Whiteford. So every year when the CBOC makes a report, we have an ad hoc subcommittee that is chartered to make an annual report. And the committee was concerned about some of the expenditures on Whiteford. They basically had a question, and we want to investigate that. We want to find out what's going on with Whiteford. So we did that. So the ad hoc subcommittee looked at Whiteford, made a report, which is on the March agenda package of the CBOC, so you can actually download it if you want. And there were basically two questions we asked. One is the activities in 16-17 with respect to Whiteford, were these according to the bond language? As you know, the process of moving special ed away from Whiteford started around 2014. And it went all the way until it was basically announced. And my understanding is actually that the board doesn't decide on these things. It's actually the superintendent who decides, I want to move to school or not. And the board was notified, I think, in a special ed update that the move was imminent. So that question was basically, yes, the funds were used correctly. Some members expressed, like, well, if the district knew that we were going to move the students out, is it then a good idea to spend Measure G money on that? And, the final conclusion was yes, because for a full year, the children and the staff benefited from, air conditioning and better roofing. So the answer was yes, the money was spent accordingly. However, there was a note that it wasn't addressed. It wasn't addressed in public. It would be interesting if there would have been a public discussion, simply merely a discussion to say, we have now a situation where we want to spend Measure G money on Whiteford, but we also know that we're going to move special ed out of Whiteford, and Whiteford effectively becomes empty. And, just pose the question as a discussion. That didn't happen, but again, that didn't have any implications for our findings and concerns saying that the money was well spent or not. We think the money was well spent. So the second question was, we are now in a situation where Whiteford is empty. And the question is, well, does the CBOC think that if we spend money on this empty building, which is effectively no longer a school, no longer a place where, students get education, would it be applicable for the bond language? And, we concluded, that was our opinion, that that's not the case. So we think that as long as Whiteford is not used as a school, it's disqualified from using these funds. Later on, of course, if students would go there, it would qualify again. The bond language is fairly explicit. There's no money that can be spent on the district office. And if you see all the listed structures that apply to the bond, all of them are basically schools. So, I think it's pretty logical to say, hey, when we want to do construction or changes on things like that on Whiteford, we cannot use Measure G money. Our recommendation is one and the same as last year, to develop a deferred maintenance plan. And I do want to point out that there's some difference with the last year's reports, because we had some concerns with respect to the communication from the district. And I think for that year, it definitely improved a lot. So we got a much more timely updates. And so that's one of the reasons you don't see that right now as a recommendation in the report. So, the following people, CBO thanks the following people: Brian Richard, Sarah Wilson, for all her work on the agenda and the documents, and the business services staff. Mr. Robert Sands, John Watkins from Vanner, and then Michael Ash, the auditor, who audits the Fund 21. So that's basically the report. I hope I didn't go too fast or too much on the surface. And if there's any questions that any of the members have, I'd be happy to answer them to my abilities.
I have a comment, if I may.
I have a comment as
Okay.
well.
I just want to thank the committee. I know that it's not the most fun and exciting committee to be on, to be dealing with CBOC and watching over that. And I know that you guys have both spent many hours of your own time really just pouring over, making sure that we're maximizing those dollars. I just want to thank you for that. That's all.
And I too wanted to commend the CBOC for all the hard work and due diligence. You caught many mostly small errors in coding, things like that, that would have gone right by if you didn't have your nose to the grindstone looking at the detail. Thank you.
Can you introduce the other members that are here when you have time? Oh, you already have.
I keep bringing up my parade, right? First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Knoop. He is our technical support, as you could tell. And then Mr. Adam Ozaleski and Joanna Navarro, they were the rest of the ad hoc committee. They spent countless hours preparing the Whiteford document and reviewing the 1617 bond financial information and preparing the report. I would also like to recognize the rest of our committee, Merrick Yarborough, Jack Dane, and Olga Bourgeois. At this time, I would also like to add an additional caveat to this recognition in that Mr. Knoop and Mr. Jack Dane are founding members of the committee, and their term will end at the end of this month, so they've fulfilled their obligation according to law, and so they will be departing. They've been on the committee since March of 2012, so I think they deserved an applause for their diligence in serving. And thank you for your service. I'd like to also say that our committee has struggled to maintain the legal required number of 7 members. Based on the last committee membership extension approved by the board, I will also be departing the committee at the end of this month. So as of July 1st, the committee will be comprised of only 4 members. We hope the district will make every effort to advertise the vacancies, encouraging parents and community members to apply, bringing the number of members to at least the minimum of 7 prior to the September 11th meeting. Thank you. And were there any questions that you had?
Thank you.
I'd just like to add one element, and I want to thank Cindy Parks, who is instrumental in discovering and finding things. And Cindy helped me a lot when I just got on the CBOC. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. I'm just guessing as much as I can. But Cindy helped me a lot. And she also helped me a lot to be diligent, to understand what the word diligent actually means, You don't say, oh, it's okay, I don't want to, it's too difficult, I don't want to bother with it. No, you look at it and you say, if it's not right, it's got to be said. And I appreciate that you gave that to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Crocker?
If we're looking in terms of advertising for this, at our meeting yesterday, they were talking about the fact that there are now 2 community boards that are at New Park and someplace else where announcements are. And the city has it, so I think contacting the city and letting them know that these positions are available. You can't do that? I understand that. So I'm saying to the district that this is a place where we can list, and it'll go to the community, and it's where people go. So I think that utilizing that would be a good direction. I'm not sure who you contact. I assume the city manager's office.
I'll call Al Maggie.
Gotcha.
Thank you very much. Next, we move on to the agreement with Dex Tech.
I think we have to vote. I think we have to vote. There's a motion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We made, the motion was made by Mr. Nguyen, and the second was by Mr. Rodriguez. Please vote. Five ayes. Thank you.
Is there a presentation for this one as well? 10.8?
We've got a time problem. I don't know.
Move to approve.
10.8.
What are we approving? The
audiovisual project.
The whiteboard.
The
1.5 million is
interactive
gonna take 3
whiteboard.
times as long as the other one.
There's been a motion and.
I second.
Second, Ms. Crocker, did you want?
Yeah, what is, we're talking about 200 and some $1,000 for the difference between the whiteboard and the ceiling mount.
Yeah.
What is, just
Larry's
really,
here.
really,
Larry's able to
yeah, I know,
answer.
just,
So, ceiling mount projector is that, right there, regular projector. Interactive whiteboard is whiteboard with projector on top of it that allows students to interact with the content on the whiteboard.
so what
Like
is,
a smartboard, if you're familiar with the concept.
okay, what is more flexible for the teacher?
Interactive whiteboard does everything that does and then some more. I didn't expect them to come in as close as they did, which is why we asked for both. I was frankly a little surprised they came in as close as they did.
What's the life expectancy of the whiteboard?
So the life expectancy of the technology on the whiteboard is 8 to 10 years, I believe. We went with laser as our specification instead of lamps. It's basically lamp-free, which means that owners won't be on the schools to replace projector lamps, which is a big problem for them right now.
So if we were talking about the ceiling mounted, what is the life expectancy of
They
that?
were both spec'd as laser projectors, so we believe 7 to 10 years is fair.
And this is coming from what source?
This is from the Russian fund. This is from when the board, the technology package the board was proposing back in March of 2016.
Okay, thank you. And did we have a motion in a second?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Mr.
Second
Nguyen
by
and
Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez, you're ahead of me. Please vote. 5 ayes. Thank you. While we look at this donation report, would someone mind looking up the last meeting so we can announce?
It's in there.
They're both.
I'd like to move to approve.
I'll second.
Please vote. Ms. Crocker?
I thought I had, okay.
5 ayes. Thank you.
Do you mind if I read the June 5th?
Yeah, would you like to read the
Okay,
June 5th then?
I'll read the June 5th. $500 for Snow Elementary for the donor Newark Rotary Foundation specified purpose summer reading program. Donation of $65 for Newark Memorial High School. The donor is Newark Memorial High School families. Specified purpose classroom materials for ceramics. Donation of $35 to Newark Memorial High School from, again, the Newark Memorial High School families. Classroom materials for photography. An amount of $775 for Newark Memorial High School from the families again. Classroom materials for sculpture. $1,104 for Newark Memorial High School from the families at the high school. Classroom material, specified purpose, classroom materials for science. $500 for Music Elementary. The donor is Bank of America, the Employee Giving Program, Yvonne Flores, and specified purpose, school use as determined by the principal. So thank you so much for your donations.
Okay, Ms. Crocker, as a member of the Newark Rotary, would you read the?
I just lost my screen.
Well, then I'll read it.
Thank you.
Okay. $2,000 for Newark Memorial High School. That's from the Newark Rotary Foundation for the Ironman Wrestling project. $500 for Graymount Elementary. That's from the Newark Rotary Foundation for reducing test anxiety for students. $500 for Music Elementary from the Newark Rotary Foundation, the Ballet Folklorico Dance Program. Then $2,000 gift card for Music Elementary for the College Football Playoff Foundation and Bay Area Host Committee, Mr. John Montoya's classroom. $80 for Music Elementary from Your Cause LLC, trustee for PG&E, school use as determined by the principal, for a total of $5,080. Thank you to all of the donors.
Child Nutrition Services.
Move to approve.
Second.
This saves us money.
Yep, they are.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, child nutrition.
I moved. Member Presado seconded.
Please vote.
That's fine, I'll take. I think it was Member Rodriguez, but I.
Oh, I take it back. Member Rodriguez second, I'm sorry. Sean. Rodriguez.
Real close.
Ms. Crocker?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my
Your
thing up
screen
here.
went down.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's all right.
Give her 1 minute. Yep, there you go.
Okay. 5 ayes. It is closing on the 10 o'clock hour. I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
I'll move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes.
By how much?
15 minutes. Let's go.
Could I ask if that's...
Is that your best and final?
That's my best and final.
Could I ask if that's not inclusive of going back into closed session for a few minutes?
Yeah, that's not inclusive of that,
Okay.
just for open session.
Okay, 15 minutes, did you
Yes.
say?
15.
If we say 10:30, that should take care of it.
Yes, let's just say 10:30.
Sure, 10:30.
10:30.
Okay, 10:30, is there a
Then that's my
second?
best and final.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen makes the
Moved.
motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Preciado seconds. Please vote. 5 ayes, thank you.
I have a correction.
Yes.
I have a correction, and I know we're close to leaving this section, so I want to do it before we leave this section. Staff has informed me there is a typo in item 10.3, and I'd like them to make that for the record. Kim, would you step forward on the typo that was in that segment? That might actually clarify some of the confusion that was swirling about earlier.
Yes, on page 3 of the 8
Of
pages
10.3.
of the AB 1200, which will go to the county, regarding the NTEA.
Hold on, let us get there. Tell us where it is again.
So
There's 2 documents, an 8-page and a 2-page. It's 3rd page of the 8-page document, Public Disclosure of Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Which one is it, Shar? The middle, top, or bottom one?
Second one.
Second one in the middle?
so
upper-
number
upper
3,
right.
AB 1200.
Upper right.
And
Okay.
it's letter G, source of funding for proposed agreement. Yeah, you can see that the sentence doesn't read correctly, and it is saying that the off-schedule bonus will be paid out of part of LCAP, which is not correct. As I said before, it'll be paid accordingly to the way the employee's position is currently coded at that time, when that position is coded next year. So if they are coded at F0500, if they have a position that is funded by that, then that piece will be coded that way, but every other NTA employee will only be coded, their bonus will be coded per their position coding.
So I think we owe a thanks to the community members who brought that forward as a
Yes.
confusing issue.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I'm wondering do we have to,
Yes, we will amend the sentence. It has not been sent to county yet.
no, but I mean, do we have to, because we moved and approved the language as it stood, so do we have to do a motion to suspend the rules to go to 10.3? I'm trying to figure out the process, because the last thing we want is that because we didn't vote for it the correct way, now it's not valid, and I don't want to have to.
Yeah, I would think we should suspend the rules, go back and re-vote with the correction.
I agree.
So do we have to move and second to suspend the rules, or do we have to?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I move that we suspend the rules.
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez seconds. Please vote by hand.
Aye.
5 ayes,
Why by hand? Why by hand?
because it takes less time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, please,
Who moved and seconded, just for, let Shar catch up?
Member Thomas moved and Member Rodriguez seconded.
To extend the rules.
To suspend the
Suspend the
rules
so we can go back and
It
vote
was
on.
unanimous.
on
So I move
correct.
that we accept 10.3 based on the correction.
And the correction would put a period after the word cost, and the remaining part of the sentence will be striking.
And so Member Rodriguez moves. Who seconds it?
I'll second.
Ms. Crocker seconds.
Oh,
Please,
yeah, never mind.
please vote. Ooh, cleared and closed rather than, sorry, could you
You
vote
can do it
again?
again, then can we do it like the same? So Member Rodriguez moved, and then in the original one, I seconded, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
fine. Member Rodriguez moves, Member Preciado seconds. Please vote. Mr. Nguyen? Oh, okay. 5 ayes, thank you.
I apologize, but I wanted to get it corrected tonight.
No, no apologies necessary.
Thank you, guys.
Do it right.
Okay, so now we are back where?
10.11.
Employee organizations.
No, the
10.11.
calendars.
Calendar.
Calendar.
10.11.
Move to approve.
Right.
Member Nguyen moves to approve.
I'll second.
Member Crocker seconds. Please vote.
I had a request to speak.
Oh, please, I didn't see that.
So I wanted to say that, so in the past I've said that I would support the change, and I still do. And I've also said, though, that we have to make sure that we provide enough notice. I said that at least a year in advance. So for me, as part of the motion, again, I don't know if we can add this on this, but make sure that the community is informed, because too many times we don't let the parents know, and then all of a sudden it's like we approved a calendar that changed people's schedule.
But, yeah,
It's on the board.
This is the notice.
It's on the posted.
This doesn't start for another 15
so,
months.
So I know, but yeah, exactly, that's why I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. But I mean, posting is not enough. Like, just because you post it as a parent, like, we need to make an active effort to put it in a newsletter to let people know that this is for the next 2 years, because it's a big change.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Okay, could we continue voting? Okay. 5 ayes, thank you.
Now it's employee organizations.
Employee organizations.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for extending the meeting till 10:30, because I only have 20 minutes to talk.
All right, everybody.
So my name's Timothy Merritt. I'm the president-elect of NTA. I officially start on July 1st. So you can still refer to Tommy if you have any problems. Till then.
You're a lot nicer than Tommy was.
Well, I want to tell you about one of the jobs I used to have. I worked for the Navy. I was on a submarine, and I was a top secret materials petty officer. Okay, so I'm really good at keeping secrets. But as NTA president, I'm not going to keep any secrets. And I want to just say from the start, what I say isn't to offend. My goal is to build relationships, community, teachers, and the district. I feel like we've kind of drifted apart. There's some 70s song playing in my mind right now, but we need to
Which
come
song
together.
is it? Dreamweaver?
It is Dreamweaver. There you go.
I'm with you.
No. So I just want to be candid that my position as NTA president is to build relationships and to stand for the students and the teachers and what's best for the community. Normally we applaud after you ratify a contract. Mr. Rodriguez, now I don't know what the percentages of income that you get from selling insurance, but if you got an extra
10%.
0.5%,
Not very much.
You wouldn't applaud. You talked for at least 20 minutes about spending $500,000, and as was drilled into us on the negotiations committee, $250,000 is a 0.5%. And I know that's ongoing, so we get that. Nobody's really happy with that percent, and we understand our part in maintaining a balanced budget, but we're really not happy with 0.5%. Other districts, to the extreme, Richmond, West Costa County, they just approved a budget of 15%. Well, they were the lowest paid in their county, but many of the other districts, they're work to order, work to rule, and we did not want to do that. We want to be partners, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity. I appreciate those that have reached out and offered to hear me and talk to me, listen to me. So I'm looking forward to the next year. It's going to be a challenge, but we're going to get it done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something real quick? It isn't an easy job, okay? And I appreciate you, moving forward to take that on. Tommy, and I apologize, I'm just kidding. Tommy, I love Tommy and Chris, they were great. And so you have big shoes to follow, but I'm excited that you're on board and you're going to work together with the administration to make sure we continue the tradition that we've always had of working together as a unit here. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, and that's worth an applause.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, but next we move on to the consent agenda, personnel items. We will vote on these individually. 12.1 is the appointment of the Executive Director of Human Resources.
I'll second. So Member Crocker moved, Mr. Preciado seconded.
Please vote. Superintendent, I'm going to wait till the end of all of these, and you can make some introductions.
Yes.
Move to approve.
Is that even necessary? They're all internal.
Mr. Rodriguez moves to approve the appointment of Director of Special Projects. Mr. Preciado. Come on, you're making me. Okay. You're making me talk too fast. We have till 10:30.
I'll have you say Mr. Preciado if you want.
Preciado.
Preciado.
Please vote. 5 ayes. Next, 12.3, appointment of Assistant Principal of Newark Junior High School.
Member Wynn moves.
I'll second.
Member Wynn moves. Member Preciado seconds. Please vote.
Got it.
5 ayes. Thank you. And 12.4, the personnel report.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Wynn moves. Mr. Rodriguez seconds. Please vote. 5 ayes. Thank you. And Mr. Sanchez, do you want to do the honors?
Yes, I would like to introduce, first of all, just thank the board and know that I'm really happy to show that we're promoting 3 people within our organization, and I think that builds on the foundation that is of very high value to this board. I want to start by introducing Ms. Jessica Saavedra. If Jessica, you step to the podium. Tell us your entire history and education. Just kidding.
1 minute.
Just anything you want to say to the board in your new role as you move forward, now that you're officially in the role as Executive Director of Human Resources.
Yes, thank you so much, and good evening. I know it's been a long day for all of you guys and for us as well, but I'm really excited. And again, I want to just thank you again for the trust, and I promise to do a good job and work very closely with our union partners, and look forward into creating a climate where we can all get along and look for what's best for our students. So thank you again.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Ms. Robin Surt, Director of Special Projects.
Yay!
So I just wanted to thank the school board and Superintendent Sanchez and Assistant Superintendent Salinas for offering me this opportunity and having confidence in me. I'm going to try to do this next part without crying. It is bittersweet for me because I've had the wonderful privilege to be the principal of Snow Elementary School for the past 8 years. And I have to say they are the most amazing and hardworking staff. They are truly talented, and we have a dedicated community and brilliant students. And I will always have a love and passion and continue to have them hold them true to my heart. And I'll always be a Blizzard Bear. But I'm very excited about my new role, and I thank you again for this opportunity.
Can I say something quickly? superintendent told you that you're gonna have dual roles, right? You're still gonna be the principal of
Traffic
Snow
duty
also,
and then.
I was waiting till tomorrow to say that.
No, my kids, you know, but you're perfect for this position, and I know that everybody's gonna love you, and you're gonna bring a lot of energy to that position, and hopefully you'll have something to say with Superintendent Sanchez and on the new principal at Snow, because they love you there, and Jessica, you could have went somewhere else and got more money, and I'm glad you stayed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you both.
And Mike Gordon is attending to some important family business, so he would have liked to have been here, but.
Can you share a little bit about Mr. Gordon? Because he
Mr. Gordon is being moved to assistant principal in Newark Junior High. He has a very strong background, and actually was one of the people that helped get MCA Academy off the ground. And we believe he brings some of that aspect to try to bear and develop some STEAM and programming at the junior high. And I think he'll be a nice addition to that team. I've talked with Principal Neal. He's also looking forward to just a new team member that brings that kind of experience that's from the district. So we wish him the best as well.
Thank you.
I have to exit. I'm cramping up real bad, if you don't mind.
Can I give you a document? Here. Mr.
You need to stay. For making all those extra comments. You need to stay to the bitter end.
We're staying here because you talk so much, right?
Lock the door, Tom.
That's not cool. That's off the record.
Okay.
You're cool,
Messing with
right?
our buddy.
Next, we move on to the consent agenda. I don't believe anyone wanted to speak to any of these issues.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Each item or?
Every item.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Mr. Nguyen moves to approve.
13.1 to 13.13.
13.1 to 13.14.
13.
13, you're correct.
Mr. Nguyen moves.
I'll second.
Mr. Preciado seconds. Please vote. Four ayes. Mr. Rodriguez is absent. Okay, next, the expulsion, the stipulated expulsion. Could I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Mr. Nguyen moves to approve.
I'll second.
Ms. Crocker seconds. Please vote. Four ayes. Mr. Rodriguez is absent. Next, we move to the Board of Education Committee reports, announcements, requests, debrief, and discussion. Mr. Nguyen.
Just one quick request related to the item we discussed earlier. Can we get, in regards to the language, the A through G,
yes,
either sent to me via email or the entire board via email or Friday update?
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Crocker?
I just wanted to say that we had a great meeting with the city in terms of the liaison committee meeting. It was the kind of thing that we're looking for it to do. A lot of discussion about what's happening in terms of the city, in terms of the three major projects they have, and that we're looking at, and I'm not sure what we're going to do in terms of the MOU for the use of McGregor Fields, but I think that should be coming up soon, so that the next time we meet, which will be in October.
July 31st is when I'm planning to bring it back to the board for conversation.
Right. But the liaison committee meeting is in October.
October 4th, I believe?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's before the meeting that we have.
That's right.
The first meeting. So it was an excellent meeting, and we missed
Very
you,
exciting.
but it was good, yeah. Other than that, nothing.
Mr.
Yeah, so I thought I mentioned this earlier in terms of if we could bring back or like kind of for the LCAP, kind of our measurable outcomes and the things that I'm specifically interested. I don't know if the board would be thinking about how we're looking at STEAM activities, the extra curricular activities, and then trying to make sure I recall this right, the A through G kind of discussion that we've had. But it's really the LCAP at sometime in December, if we could bring back like where we're at from what we've done.
Okay, and I would kind of echo that we, in our monthly update for the budget rather than having it in the consent agenda as a finance report. I'd like to see a conversation about how we are proceeding with spending the money that is in the LCAP and other agenda issues, related to finance. Also, I'd like to say that it was great fun going to all the promotions and graduations. Staff does a great job of setting those up, and they're very inspiring and entertaining in some cases. So I really had a good time, and I hope everyone has a great summer. I won't be here on the 31st, but I will probably phone in from Alaska.
Wow.
Yeah.
From the fishing boat.
Just put out an address.
Yeah, I'd like to phone in at least a closed session
Puget
from
Sound.
Alaska. And
Somewhere in Puget Sound, right?
yeah, so looking forward to all of us having a nice break,
Washington.
a nice rest, especially you, Superintendent Sanchez, and with enjoying your family over an extended period.
It'll be nice.
And I forgot to mention, I will be out of town that week, so I will not be able to, it'll be for 2 weeks.
On the 31st?
Yeah.
Okay, so the rest of you have to go, or we can't have the meeting, because that'll be, you need a majority of the board at the meeting.
Physically present?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they have to have 3 present.
Yeah.
So
Is there an alternative time?
Yeah, I do recall that when we discussed the calendaring of the 31st or the meeting in July, that it was sort of like a floating one, that if we needed it, we'd have it. If we didn't need it, we wouldn't have it. And even if, or it could be rescheduled because of hiring, et cetera.
We'll be approving a lot of contracts and new hires.
Yeah.
But you could ratify them. I think we've done that too, where you come back and ratify after, but I think.
Or maybe we just push it for another week or something, have it in early
Well,
August.
that was
if that's
my
okay.
recommendation from the start, but that's the national night out.
Yeah. That's why I got moved to that
Well,
day.
I think, is that something that would get in the way of it? I don't know.
I mean, if we have no other
You'll hear
choice.
about it.
I know, but if we have no
Well,
other
3
choice.
of us will be here. I'll be here. That's the 31st.
I'm gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah, but I think member, well, barring.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going out of town at that time, and I should be back, but.
Okay.
Okay. Superintendent's comments.
Just congratulate everyone on completing a school year. I know our teachers and staff have worked very hard this year, and I want to thank them and hope they are able to have some time with their families. I also will be emailing you a video clip that I found today that really illustrates some of the struggles some of our immigrant families are going through on the border right now, and separating families, and just it's a well done kind of mini documentary, but it's only about 10 minutes, so it's not really too in depth, but it kind of gives you a flavor of how it's impacting families, and that's the focus. Is what it shows how families and children are going through these struggles right now, and I think it's. I think about the challenges we deal with in our district, and I watched that today, and it really put in perspective how fortunate we are.
There's a resolution in support.
Yes.
I won't be here, but if you want to wait till the next one, then.
I will wait because it's important. Yeah. But I just know that that's coming, and I really kind of regrounds you.
Yeah.
So that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're going to adjourn to closed session, and I will let Charles let you know when we come back out. It adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
We got it done.